Christopher Nolan is no stranger to blowing things up, from Inception's snowy alpine fortress to Tenet's airport collision. He's always been one to create as many thrilling moments as possible through in-camera effects, but no one explosion could ever be as crucial to a Nolan film as Oppenheimer's landmark Trinity Test, a faithful recreation of the world's first ever successful atomic bomb detonation.
The build to the Trinity Test and then what comes after. This is a film about consequences, and we want it to be unsettling.
For a director with a long-held passion for practical effects, it was actually one of the rare occasions from his previous films where he embraced CGI methods that made it clear to him that Oppenheimer's cinematic centerpiece would have to be created without the use of computer graphics.
At the end of Dark Knight Rises is a nuclear explosion, the point of which is very, very different from the explosion we knew we had to portray the real-life Trinity Test. And so we used computer graphics to do the explosion in Dark Knight Rises, but it was, strange to say, in that sequence, it was the release of tension. It was actually put further away and made to feel safe. But when I came to Oppenheimer, and I thought, okay, how do we portray the Trinity Test? That first atomic device being detonated. That's not going to work. Computer graphics, they're extremely versatile, and the detail that can be achieved and the variety of imagery that can be achieved is obviously unparalleled. But they tend to feel a little anodyne, a little safe. It's very difficult to have computer graphics convey threat, which is why they have to be used very carefully in horror movies, for example. It's difficult to make CG threatening. I first showed the script to Andrew Jackson, my visual effects supervisor, and said, I don't think that tool's going to work for us. So let's see if we can produce all of these effects using analog methods. From the very first imaginings that Oppenheimer has of the quantum world, of atoms, how they would be interacting, the strong force between them, waves, particles, the duality of that.
The scene set prior to the detonation in the vast New Mexico desert is one filled with tension. Each member of the cast is on top of their game, displaying a range of excitement, fear, and dread. It's a breadth of emotion that needed to be carefully balanced by Nolan and reflected in the blast itself. So many of his previous stunts and set pieces were designed in order to thrill and entertain the audience, turning their world upside down like a semi-truck flipping in downtown Gotham. Oppenheimer called for a different type of effect, one more akin to a moment of tragedy from something like There Will Be Blood than the heroic action of Top Gun Maverick. It's meant to be a horrifying moment that leaves theaters solemnly quiet as opposed to whooping with glee.
It's useful that you use the word horrific in the same breath as entertainment, which seems contradictory, and of course it's a little uncomfortable talking about the word entertainment in regard to something so serious. And when we speak of entertainment in movies, we're not necessarily talking about fun and laughter and happy things. We're talking about engagement. We're talking about being riveted by a very tense and dramatic story and possibly appalled, possibly horrified. That's engagement, and that is the stuff of entertainment. And so for me, everything about Oppenheimer's story was about engagement. Everything is about being in his head and using the IMAX format, which we've used for action in the past. We knew it would give us the vast desert, the weather coming in, the storms, the Trinity Test itself, with its beauty and horror in sort of equal measure. That contradictory impulse, and it's there in the story structure as well, the build to the Trinity Test and then what comes after. This is a film about consequences, and we want it to be unsettling.
The Manhattan Project was one of great secrecy at the height of World War II. It's surprising then that so much archival footage of the event exists. This was a luxury that Nolan happily took advantage of, poring over the films to grasp an accurate sense of what Los Alamos looked like at its bustling peak. Being true to life is one thing, however, and something Nolan values highly, but that also needs to be balanced with making sure it's still a cinematic spectacle to behold.
It's a tricky balance with something as well documented as the Trinity Test. And, it was, it's very inside baseball, as they say, but for filmmakers to look at the cameras they developed, the way they shot those tests, really remarkable, brilliant stuff. Shooting at frame rates far beyond what we can do now. All kinds of incredible technology, but archival footage is inherently distancing. We needed to be in the texture of the film with all of the imagery we created. So it was incumbent on us to be guided by and not contradict the documented reality, but to be expressive of it in in our own way. I mean, I think it was fortunate for us that the bulk of the documentation, the Trinity Test, is in black and white. So at the very least, by bringing color to it, we're being forced to sort of make it our own. And a lot of what we did in both the shooting and then in particular in the editing of the sequence is really based on the first-hand accounts. It's more about what people said about it than what the photographs or the film of it said.
One thing that couldn't be legitimately reproduced was obviously the atomic blast itself. Multiple techniques were experimented with by Nolan's special effects team, led by Scott Fisher and Andrew Jackson, to recreate the sparking flashes and fiery flurries of the explosion. Ping pong balls were smashed together, paint was hurled across walls, and luminous magnesium solutions were developed. By filming these events super close up at variable frame rates, they combined with director of photography Hoyt van Hoytema's sweeping IMAX cinematography to create in-camera effects that filled the screen with a power that such a monumental event demands.
Some of what we were shooting was main unit, some of it was being shot with Andrew Jackson on visual effects unit, and so we were seeing it in pieces. And I do remember one particular set of dailies that we watched that these guys had shot that really captured a feeling of immensity. Scott Fisher's work on the special effects, combining sort of magnesium flares with gasoline and black powder explosions and things. I mean, there were some extraordinary things to look at just to eye. But watching the dailies, you were seeing it develop, and with my editing brain on, and then with Jen Lame, the editor in the edit suite, you just start visualizing combinations and experimenting with combinations of imagery to give the feeling of what this must have felt like to watch this. What that gave me in the edit suite was this thread, this connecting set of analog techniques that confuse scale from the particle world of quantum mechanics to the vast universe, astrophysics, etc., and all points in between. We try and grow that thread to its ultimate release, this kind of vibrating energy that follows through the whole film to its ultimate release in this incredibly destructive event. And so some of what they did was absolutely tiny, or even beyond that, really, sort of microscopic, and some of it was absolutely vast and required intense concentration on set. We were out there in the desert of New Mexico, just like the scientists of the Manhattan Project. We built the bunkers, we built the tower, we were out there at night preparing for these very large-scale explosive events and have to be conducted safely with great care. So there's a tension, there's an anticipation in what we're doing as filmmakers that I think helps the actors, helps everybody gain some small understanding of what must it have been like to be there that night, that early morning at the Trinity Test.
The end results are there for all to see. The moment the Trinity Test explosion lights up the screen is a stunning example of practical effects work. A worthy rendering of one of history's most pivotal events, the scene never once forgets to take its eyes off the people responsible for it, with Cillian Murphy's face one that mirrors most who'll watch it, one of awe in the very literal definition of the word.
There was a definite feeling of, okay, what we're seeing is both beautiful and dangerous in equal measure, and that's what we'd ask for. So we always knew that the sequence would be a collage rather than one iconic shot. If there is an iconic shot, I think it's the profile of Oppenheimer, seeing it, and that was always the intention. And I think part of the unsettling quality of the film is due to, you do feel engaged, you do feel you understand Oppenheimer, you're kind of on that journey with him, you're not judging him. And so when you're then made to feel differently about things or question things you've already seen, it is a little uncomfortable, it's a little unsettling, and I'm hoping that the film leaves people with a sort of, an uneasy feeling.
For more on Oppenheimer, check out how a failed Batman audition led to a lifelong partnership, or the latest trailer.